Good evening and welcome to Law Talk. My name is Lester Gauthier, and this evening we have as our guest former Governor Edwin W. Edwards. Governor Edwards, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Lester. I'm glad to be here.
Very pleased to have you on our show. I saw you on an Access show with Jim Brown, former Secretary of State, and in that show, interestingly enough, you discussed some of your prior accomplishments in your past terms as governor. What do you consider to be, let's say, your 4 or 5 top accomplishments as governor of the state?
Well, certainly the writing of the new Constitution was an unprecedented effort and has served us well for all these years since it was written and passed. Also, I reorganized state government, as you know, from 260 agencies to 20 departments. I also changed the method of collecting oil and gas revenue back in 1973, which brought billions of extra dollars into our state from other parts of the country that was using natural gas and oil produced in Louisiana. I'm also very proud of I-49 and I-10. I-10 is something that I was involved in completing it from Crowley, my hometown, to Baton Rouge and on into New Orleans. And then I-49, for which I'm solely responsible as governor in allocating the last 200 miles of interstate system for I-49. That is going to provide Lafayette with limited access, 4-lane highways north to Shreveport and east and west to the Mississippi line and to the Texas line. I'm also very, very proud of the Cajun Dome and of the new regional hospital here in Lafayette, which was built, both of which were built under my administrations. And the fact that I had an opportunity to dedicate by constitutional amendment over $600 million of money which is there today for the people of Louisiana for an educational fund. It is the largest educational fund in America in any state on a per capita basis. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's there rather than spending it as we would have liked to have done in the hard times of the 80s during my past administration. We put that $600 million aside for the children of our state.
Governor, what was your downfall? Why are you not the governor today?
A number of things. Every governor of every state, Alaska, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, Louisiana, which once profited greatly from the oil and gas industry, suffered politically when the collapse of the industry came. It wasn't my fault or the governor of Texas or Oklahoma or Alaska. It was the fault of policies in Washington which failed to put on an oil import tax and do some other things which would have kept the American oil and gas industry viable. And when the collapse came, we were so dependent on oil and gas that there was a general collapse in the economy of Louisiana. And as governor, at the time, I suffered politically from it. And then that was aggravated by the trials. You know, I had a Republican prosecutor in New Orleans charged me and 7 of my relatives and friends with 357 counts, which a Republican judge and 2 juries ruled that not one of the 357 counts had any validity. But it took me away from my office and away from my job for 18 to 20 months. And during that period of time, the state badly needed leadership, and I just wasn't able to give it the time and effort, and it eroded my power and my ability to get things done. And as a result, when I faced the electorate in 1987, all those problems had accumulated, and people were just desperately seeking for something new. And Governor Romer, who was then a candidate, beguiled the people of this state with the aid of the newspapers, except for the Lafayette Advertiser, into believing that he could solve our problems without raising taxes and by trimming the budget and by bricking up 3 floors of the education building in Baton Rouge. I knew at the time that he didn't know what he was talking about, but enough people believed it where in the runoff, it was obvious that if I had continued the election, I would have lost, so I determined that it was in my interest and the state's interest to let people see that I knew what I was talking about. And I think 3 years later, they now realize that Buddy Romer just beguiled them because he has raised taxes on a number of occasions and has tried on other occasions. The budget is still not in balance. The one that was just adopted last week is several $100 million out of balance, and it has been one disaster after the other.
Why specifically did you pull out of the runoff against Romer?
Strictly speaking, because I couldn't win. It was a decision that I made early on that if I didn't get the Republican in the runoff, that I didn't think I would be able to beat either of the other three Democratic nominees. And so when Roma ended up in the runoff and had the tremendous support of the newspapers and who were willing, as I said before, to just gloss over his record and make it appear that what he was saying, if I'd have made those silly, unfounded allegations in a campaign, they would have just ripped me apart. But they let Buddy Roma do it because they wanted him to be governor. Now they are trying to continue to support him. They never take him to task for raising taxes as he has, even though he promised not to raise taxes. Even on the night he was elected, he promised not to raise taxes. They never raised the question about bricking up the education building. They never say anything about the fact that he increased the size of his own office by twice what it was when I was governor, and increased the cost from $600,000 a year to $1,200,000. And they never say anything about that. They never criticize the $7,000 fence he built to house his little boy's goat at the mansion.
Has he scrubbed the budget?
Well, of course not. The budget has gone up from a little over $6 billion to over $8 billion. And instead of scrubbing the budget like he said he was going to do, he has added almost $2 billion. It is the largest budget this state has ever had. He has increased the state's payroll by 2,500 workers. There are 1,800 more unclassified employees. He gets caught in things like a friend of his living in the mansion with a $30,000 improper state contract. When the press takes the task on it, what he does, he cancels the contract and gives him a $40,000 a year job. And then the press says nothing more about it. I mean, it's the kind of thing that has been, I think, covered by the press and I think not exposed, which he has gotten by with.
Did you not cheat him out of the opportunity to win in the second primary? It was kind of a political move on your part to pull out. He was, in a sense, unable to form a majority coalition and to have people jump on the bandwagon.
I didn't cheat him out of that. That was a natural consequence of the fact that in my own interest and what I thought was in the state's interest, I deprived him of that privilege. But I did it not only because I didn't think I could win, but because I thought it was important that he become governor as soon as possible so people could realize as early as possible that he didn't know what he was talking about. And, you know, it took some people 3 years, a lot of people just 6 months, but I think practically everybody listening to this program and most people in Louisiana know now that Buddy Roma did not know what he was talking about when he ran for governor in 1987.
The legislature has finally passed a bill which will allow the people to vote on the lottery. Do you agree with that stance?
Absolutely. I'm sorry it wasn't done 5 years ago when I first suggested it. 32 other states have done that, and I think the people of this state want the option of voting on it. I have advocated that. People call me a fool, irresponsible, immoral, and all the kind of other bad names. But after all, it's our responsibility as elected officials to let the people decide their own destiny. And this was one issue that I thought should have been submitted to the people a long time ago. If you had done that, the state would be $200 million a year better off, and you would not have had to raise taxes at every turn of the legislative session as Buddy Roma has done since he's been governor.
Buddy Roma, as governor, had a difficult decision to make with reference to the execution of Dalton Prejean. You're familiar with
Yes.
Dalton Prejean, who killed the state trooper. What would you have done in that situation?
I would have done the same thing. On the occasions that I had to face that responsibility as governor, I never intervened. I never stopped an execution. I would not do that unless I thought there was new, compelling evidence which would establish the innocence of the party. Other than that, I think once the person has gone through all the legal delays and the ramifications of the legal system, if that is the decision of the judge and jury, then I do not think the governor should interfere unless, as I said before, new evidence develops after the trial in time to save the person's life by establishing his innocence.
Abortion's been a very difficult issue in the recent session, and Governor Roma, through his actions, has somehow been kind of had a tendency to alienate both sides of the issue by kind of being in the middle. Where would you have been on the issue?
It's an issue that's very volatile, and if I would have one thing to say to everybody on both sides is I would appeal to them to try to be more compassionate and more understanding of the other person's viewpoint. It is not the kind of issue that anybody has all the answers or anybody should make the decision for everybody else. There are two sides, many sides to the question. I cannot imagine a person who feels that a woman who is pregnant but whose life is threatened by the fetus should not have the option of saving her life by aborting the fetus. I cannot imagine how a person would say to a woman who has been raped that she should be required to relive that terror for 9 months with a fetus growing in her body, which is the seed growing in her womb as a result of a horrible trauma such as rape or incest. In that regard, I think Governor Romo was right in vetoing the bill, and I would have done the same thing.
Okay. Are you going to be a candidate for governor in 1990?
I'm certainly encouraged to do so, and it is my intention to do so. There was a poll that came out in the Shreveport paper last week which asked the question in Bossier and Caddo parishes, which is Buddy Romer's backyard, whether or not I should run in 1991, and 55% said yes, 24% said no, and 21% had no opinion, and that is very, very encouraging in an area such as Shreveport and Bossier City.
Now, one of the things that you contributed to, I think, is the open primary elections. What are your comments? Do you think that's a good system?
What that is, it's the only one in America like that. Other states have cross primaries or open primaries. We have an open election system where every candidate, regardless of how he is affiliated, runs at the same time with every other candidate. And every voter, regardless of how she or he is registered, can vote for the candidate of his or her choice. If one person gets a clear majority, he wins. If not, the top two, it might be 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, or 2 Republicans, the top 2 run it off. I think that's a fair system. I think it eliminates the third election that we used to have in Louisiana. It eliminates a lot of the acrimony and bitterness in these hard-fought primary elections, and it has helped swell the ranks of the Republican Party. Many people who were registered as Democrats, but who were really Republicans at heart, did not want to register Republicans because they were effectively disenfranchised, not being able to vote in Democratic primaries. So the system, I think, has helped the Republican Party, it's helped the election system, and it is certainly the fairest to the voter, who can now go and vote for anybody he wishes, no matter how he's registered.
Could that system help you the next time around in this regard? Buddy Romer, as sitting governor, will have X amount of built-in support, and of course you, Governor, draw from certain groups, and you're going to have X amount of built-in support. There may be other candidates who may divide up the middle, so to speak, and put you and Governor Romer in a runoff. You think that's a probable scenario?
It could help, but you know, I ran in 1975 against 6 people, and I got 63% of the vote, so I won in the first election. When I ran against Dave Treen, he was the governor. There were 8 other candidates. I got 63% of the vote again, and I won in the first election. If Buddy Romer were popular enough, he could win in the first election. I don't think that's going to happen, but my opinion is that if everybody who's talking about running actually runs, or if Romer, Edwards, and a Republican, I'm talking about a good Republican, not Bob Livingston, who can't get the Republican vote because he just is not that good a candidate, but a good Republican were to run, then I think it'd be a close call as to whether or not which of the 3 of us would be in the runoff. I would believe that I would be one of them against either Romer or the Republican, but I think that in a situation like that, that the chances are it would probably be the Republican, because I know how bad things are for Buddy Romer now. I've been in that situation. But the difference is that my health was good, and unfortunately, and I'm not happy for him. I wish he had good health. He's a diabetic, and that's an awful strain on anybody who has any kind of physical illness. And I'm not knocking him. I'm simply saying that it's tough to be governor in these days and times when your health is bad. I don't have any of the, the other problems that he has, yet I know what he's going through, and it would not be surprising to me if he elected not to run, although I'm not saying that. He has certainly never said that, but I know the strain that he must be under because I've been there.
Well, is Paul Hardy the good Republican you're talking about?
Paul, I think, would run a good race. There are people who say that he will probably run for lieutenant governor again because he wants to make sure he gets his retirement. He needs 2 more years of service, I understand, to complete his retirement. But Paul, I think, would be a very good candidate as a Republican because he is well known throughout the state and, has no scars and no scandals involved with him, and I think would make a good candidate.
Let me talk to you about some people that have been in your past and ask you what is your current relationship with these people. Billy Tozan, who was a floor leader for you at one time and ran in the last race. And many people, some analysis might say that Billy Tozan could have been governor had you chosen not to run. What is your relationship to Billy Tozan right now?
My relationship now is cool because Billy is unhappy and blames me for the fact that he did not get elected governor. I don't think Billy Tozan could have been elected governor regardless, for a number of reasons. But, you know, the facts are that I was the governor. Billy Tozan had been my supporter, and I had been his supporter. I helped him get elected to the State House of Representatives on 2 occasions. I campaigned against a Republican friend of mine to help him go to Congress. Went into his district and traveled the district with him. We were close political friends. I did not think it was fair of him to run against me, just like it would not have been fair for me to run against him for his job. I think that given the situation that I was the governor and we were political and personal friends, that he owed it to me to say, well, okay, if that's your decision, I'll respect it. I would never have run against him, but he chose to do that. And that's his privilege, of course. But he's always blamed me for the fact that he ran so poorly. But I don't think that I'm responsible for that. I think that other circumstances are responsible for it.
Dave Treen, is there a mutual respect as his former governor?
Yes, Dave and I respect each other. I talk to him from time to time. I have a high regard for him. And, you know, I'm not saying that he ever has supported me or ever will support me, but we do not have any acrimony between us.
What about local legislator Orman Brinkhouse from St. Landry Parish?
Probably one of the most effective, concerned legislators in the state of Louisiana. And, you know, I could not say enough good things about him. He's effective, hard-working, respects his people and works for his people, and his word is as good as mine, and that's as good as I can say.
All right. Alan Barres, former president of the State Senate, and I don't think ever really a strong supporter of yours. Some people say you were involved behind the scenes in helping to knock him down from that post. Is that correct?
I was not. I never did understand Alan, coming from Lafayette and knowing how the people of Lafayette think. He seemed to be awfully conservative for this area, although I know that in the 10th Ward of Lafayette, for instance, and in some areas there are conservative people. But I know something about the demography of this area. Alan Barres was unseated for a number of reasons. Number one, he was an unlikely choice in the first instance. Buddy Roma had made a commitment in the campaign that he would not involve himself in legislative politics. Yet out of the clear blue, he picks 2 people, Alan Barres on the Senate side and Jim Demos on the House side, to be the President and the Senate and the Speaker respectively. It shocked everybody, I think probably even including Alan and Jim Demos, who were not expecting it. And that flew in the face of prevailing opinion both in the House and in the Senate. But nevertheless, bowing to the pressure from the governor, the Senate reluctantly turned on Nunes, who was very popular, and elected Allen. Well, as Roma's popularity disintegrated and decimated, more and more senators began to say, hey, we made a mistake. We need to go back to the kind of leadership we had under Nunes. And when his popularity, that is Roma's popularity, got bad enough, then the move was made for 2 reasons: Roma's unpopularity and Nunes's popularity in the Senate. I really don't think Barres was any more than a pawn in the whole thing. It wasn't for or against Barres. They didn't elect him in the first instance, and they didn't unelect him in the second instance. They responded in the first instance to the governor's mandate, and they chose an opportunity when the circumstances presented themselves to undo that which they had done unwillingly.
Many people say, at least in this area, that it was nothing that Alan Barres did or didn't do.
That's correct. Nothing he did or did not do. I don't think there's a member of the Senate that has a bad word or bitter word to say about him. He apparently, as far as I know, was fair to everybody and available to them. And, you know, Alan Barres is a Frenchman, Cajun gentleman of the highest order. I mean, you know, just the classic Cajun gentleman. And I don't think anybody could find anything bad to say about him, except that he just didn't have the popularity in the Senate that Sammy Nunes had, and he didn't have the support of the governor's office after he got the job to really effectively serve as president of the Senate. He never could get that kind of a rapport with Roma after he got the job. Had he been able to get more support from Buddy Roma, he may have been able to do a better job.
Victor Busey, longtime head of the AFL-CIO. You go back with him a long time.
We're still personal and political friends, and he has had some health problems, had a heart attack, but he's recuperating very well and is back active. And you know, he's another person whom I think has done a tremendous job for a number of agencies and causes and people outside of organized labor, for which he doesn't get much credit.
Has business really shut out labor in the last few years?
I think clearly in America and in Louisiana, conservative business interests have overshadowed the wishes and politics of organized labor. In some instances, that is unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate what business has done to injured workers and their survivors in the guise of saying that it was going to reduce workmen's compensation rates. Ed Steinmel lied to the legislature on 2 occasions and said, if you pass this, taking away these rights from injured people, insurance rates are going to go down. And they didn't. They went up. Insurance compensation rates are higher today than they have ever been. And in many instances, business people can't even get it at any price. And all that they did was to favor the insurance companies who continued to charge the same or higher rates, while at the same time taking away benefits from injured employees. One of the things that I regret having done was to sign one of the bills that came to my desk while I was governor, because I too was beguiled into believing that it would reduce insurance rates, and I was concerned about businessmen and women having to pay these high comp rates. But that is not the issue, and that did not solve the problem, and as a matter of fact, insurance rates have continued to go up.
Camille Gravel, executive counsel at one time.
A very capable, competent lawyer, a very fine gentleman, Knight of St. Gregory, father of 10 children, just as decent and pleasant and even spirited as any human being could be. And you know, I could use the rest of this program talking about what a great person he is.
I hope to have him on sometime, by the way.
He'll be an interesting guest for you.
Yeah. We touched on them, Sammy Nunez and perhaps John Alario. Perhaps we'll put them both together because they have been dubbed both by Buddy Roma as Edwin Edwards Jr. What do you think when you hear Roma calling these people Edwin Edwards Jr.?
What he doesn't realize is that unlike Barres and Demos, Nunez and Alario had followings in the Senate and in the House. Either of them could have gotten elected without my support. Neither of them could have gotten elected over my objections had I chosen to object. But the point that I make is that it did not take Edwin Edwards to make Alario Speaker of the House or Nunez President of the Senate. Each could have done it on his own right because each had that kind of following in the House and the Senate.
Governor, what are you doing now?
I'm practicing law on a limited basis in Baton Rouge with my son and daughter-in-law, both of whom are lawyers. And then I spent about half my time, as I was in Lafayette this past Monday, the 16th of July, speaking to the Sertoma Club. I've been up in Manny, Louisiana for Edwards Day, a giant parade. I speak in 3 or 4 places in Louisiana every week as I try to keep abreast of what's happening and stay in touch with friends and supporters and people.
Now, I read about a trip that you apparently made to Atlantic City or some such place and as a guest of Donald Trump. What was that all about?
I was invited up there for his birthday party about a month ago. Went up there with some friends of mine, including Charlie Milam and his wife here from Lafayette. He sent his private jet down to pick us up, and I enjoyed being with him. He's a different person and different personality, but I have a high respect for anybody who succeeds in the face of hard times like Trump has. And I know he's on hard financial times now, but I hope he'll survive because he appears to be a survivor. But let me make an observation that comes up from time to time. He has never discussed coming to Louisiana with me. He's never